What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. We're coming back to you after another Commanders loss, this time a 30-28 loss, and one of the craziest games of the year for the Washington Commanders, one of the most impactful games of the year for the Washington Commanders. I'll get into more of that in a little bit. But the Jets ended up beating Washington. The 5-9 Jets coming into this game beat the 4-10 Commanders 30-28. It was a game that was really a side of two halves. You had the first half dominated by the New York Jets, up 20-0 early on, up 17-0, 6 minutes into the game. They're up 17-0. And then in the second half, Washington, behind a pretty big quarterback change, came back in the second half and almost ended up winning this game if it wasn't for Greg Zuerlein. So I guess we'll just start and go ahead with Sam Howell, because this guy's going to be the talk of the town for the next 24 hours. Sam Howell's final stat line: 6 of 22, 56 yards, 2.5 yards per attempt. 2.5 yards per attempt. 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, and a passer rating of a nice 1.7. A nice 1.7 passer rating for Sam Howell today. So it wasn't pretty from him at all. It was probably one of his worst games of his career. And Sam Howell gets benched in the third quarter after throwing his second interception of the day for none other than Jacoby Brissett. I'll get to more about Brissett's performance in a second. But first, with Howell, this is really it. This is it for Sam Howell. I'm sorry. There's really no other way to sugarcoat it. You're getting benched for a second straight week for Jacoby Brissett, for the journeyman. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. It's over for Sam Howell, for the Sam Howell experiment in Washington. It was great coming into this year. Had a great performance against the Cowboys week 18 last year. Looked really solid in the preseason. Even at the beginning of the year against some weaker defenses, Sam Howell looked pretty good, possibly even at one point like the guy for the future. But then over the last few weeks, over this last month, Washington hasn't won a game since November 5th. So over this last month and a half, almost 2 months now, it has been a spiral decline. It's just been spiraling downhill for him ever since what? It was like week 10, maybe week 10 or week 9. So over the last month and a half, it's been really bad if you're a Sam Howell truther. And today's performance kind of was the nail in the coffin. It's over for Howell in DC. And I mean, not completely over, but as a starter, Ron Rivera, he didn't say it in his press conference. I mentioned that the word is evaluate. He used the word evaluate like 200 times in his press conference today. And it's basically sounding like this is it for Sam Howell. Jacoby Brissett will be the starter next week when we play the San Francisco 49ers in that top-tier defense. Because now with Howell going up against some of these top defenses recently, he has struggled mightily. 6 of 22, not even 60 passing yards, couldn't even throw a touchdown. I don't even think they got into the red zone with him at quarterback. I don't even know if they got into Jets territory with him at quarterback today. That's how bad this offense was when he was under center. Jacoby Brissett, I guess we'll talk about him now, but Brissett comes in and just kind of did exactly what he did last week. 10 of 13 for Brissett, 100 yards, a touchdown, passer rating of 124. He did exactly what he did last week. He came in, he led 3 touchdown drives. He led 2 last week. He led 3 today. They put Washington up. Washington was down 27-7 at the half. They were down 27-7 at the half. And Washington comes all the way back, leads the Jets with 4 minutes to go, 28-27. With 2 minutes to go, 28-27, with under 2 minutes to go. And again, Greg Zuerlein with a nice kick at the end kind of keeps a lot of Washington fans happy, because again, if Washington won this game, currently sitting with the 4th overall pick, if Washington won this game, it would be disastrous for their draft capital, because it would probably put them 9th, maybe 10th by the end of today. So it was a big time loss, and very impactful loss for Washington. The Jets, the easiest team on the schedule for the rest of the season. We knew the Rams were going to be a tough one. The Jets was probably going to be the easiest one, the one the most likely to get the win. But now you're going to go up against the 49ers next week. You're going to go up against the Cowboys in 2 weeks. It's not looking grim that Washington's going to win another game for the rest of the season. They've lost 6 in a row, I want to say. I mean, it's 9 of the last, one, the Jets, the Rams, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Giants, the Seahawks. That is 6 in a row. So they've lost 6 in a row. They've lost 8 of their last 9, and they've now lost 11 of their last 13. So it's not good. Not good. If you're a Washington fan, if you want wins, because this team is not winning, I don't expect them to win for the rest of the season. It's bad. It's bad right now in DC. So Brissett, yeah, finishing, he kind of almost brought this team back from, again, down 20 points at the half. This first half performance was atrocious. It started off drop pass by Curtis Samuel. It was very first play of the game, screen to the left. Curtis Samuel had a lot of green grass in front of him, drops it. Second play, little flat route to Logan Thomas. Sam Howell was under pressure, rolled out to his left, tosses it up to Logan Thomas, off of the hands of Logan Thomas, intercepted by the New York Jets. Like, that one wasn't even on him. The second one was on him. It was a bad pass. Didn't see Quincy Williams. Quincy Williams gets the interception. But it just shows, like, this team is nowhere close to being a playoff team. There was hopes at the beginning of the season this team was going to sneak in maybe 6 or 7 in a weaker NFC. There was hopes that this Commanders team, even with Sam Howell at quarterback, it was built around this defense. Was built 4 first-rounders on that front 4, plus the second rounder with Fedarian Mathis coming back. You had Emmanuel Forbes now to boost the secondary. Really, this defense's only weakness last year was their secondary. And then it really just relied on Sam Howell and this offensive line. And it's now the entire team. The entire team was bad. Only bright spots. Chris Rodriguez, 10 carries for 58 yards, 2 touchdowns for him. Got his first 2 touchdowns of his career. Good job for the rookie out of Kentucky. Terry McLaurin, 3 catches for 50 yards. Jahan Dotson, 2 catches for 31. Logan Thomas had the touchdown from Jacoby Brissett. He had 5 for 36. So the receiving game was iffy. 143 passing yards total for this Washington offense. That's not going to do it. The run game was solid. Again, with Chris Rodriguez, he averaged 5.8 yards per carry. Great game from him. I'm excited to see what he can do over these next 2 weeks because, again, no Brian Robinson today. Brian Robinson, I've talked about it on earlier podcasts in the last few weeks. He is the heart and soul of this offense. He was making this offense watchable at some points this season, and I don't think really people gave him credit for how much he affected how well this offense ran at some points in the season. I know it looks grim, but really Brian Robinson was our only source of offense, it felt like, in the run game, a source of any explosive plays, and even his explosive plays weren't even that explosive. So it's disappointing. It's disappointing seeing how this offense has regressed from week 1 to now week 16, 2 games left in the year for Washington, and it's just disappointing. Again, I expect Jacoby Brissett to be the starter for the rest of the season. It's crazy. It's the Ron Rivera move, though. You're saying 2 weeks ago, you're saying Sam Howell is the answer at quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Last week, you backed him up even more after benching him. You said that Sam Howell's going to be the starter again for this week. And now it's kind of I don't know what the right word is for it, but it kind of makes sense. It makes sense for this is how the Ron Rivera tenure in Washington is going to end. It's going to end with a 32-year-old, I believe, Jacoby Brissett, I think is 32-year-old journeyman quarterback playing the last few games over your young 23-year-old quarterback who you've kind of backed up this entire year saying that I really think we found our guy at quarterback. You've backed him up week after week. But now at the end of the season, you're putting the ball in the hands of the 32-year-old Jacoby Brissett over Sam Howell, which I know Sam Howell has struggled, but like, who would you rather see right now if you're Washington? We already know what we're going to have out of Jacoby Brissett, and Jacoby Brissett, I believe, is only on a 1-year deal too, so he's going to be a free agent. We know what we have out of Jacoby Brissett. Sam Howell, I mean, I know he struggled recently, but these are 2 solid defenses that he's going to go up against, that he could go up against at the end of this year, San Francisco and Dallas. And you're not even going to give him an opportunity to show what he has for a possible new head coach and a new GM. So, again, Jacoby Brissett gives us the better chance to win. But at the end of the day, who's really winning if we win these games? Like, I know the Commanders' future isn't really winning, and Ron Rivera, even if we beat the 49ers, even if we beat the Cowboys, he's still going to be fired at the end of the season. His fate is already made. So, like, it's I don't really know the point of starting Brissett for the rest of this year, and it kind of really shows the Sam Howell. It kind of throws in the white flag for real. The Sam Howell experiment has failed. The Eric Bieniemy experiment has I wouldn't say it's completely failed yet, but it's not looking good at all. This offense today, 143 yards in the air, 102 yards on the ground, like that. I don't understand because Howell was throwing nonstop in the first 3 quarters of this game. Even in the second half when they were down, or even in like the second quarter when they were down 2 touchdowns, I mean, EB was making him let it rip like every play. So I think Bieniemy really needs to adjust his play calling because you can't have a young guy like Sam Howell. Sam Howell's on pace. If he were to start these last 2 games, he was on pace to break the franchise record for most passing attempts in a single season. As a 23-year-old, not technically a rookie, but basically a rookie who didn't play in his rookie season, it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing where this team and most people thought this team could be at the beginning of the year. I believed that this team was a playoff caliber team, especially in a weaker NFC. I knew this team wasn't the best team in the NFCs. I knew we probably weren't going to compete against the Eagles or the 49ers in the NFC, but I thought this team was at least a playoff team. Not a team that's currently 4-11 and they just lost on a game-winning field goal almost as time expired to a Jets team with Trevor Siemian at quarterback. So it's definitely disappointing to see how this team has gone from being 2-0 after the first 2 weeks of the season and now 4-11 3 months later. Like, I don't know. It's pretty bad. But yeah, that's what got on Jacoby Brissett. Greg Zuerlein. I'm one who, if Washington wants to rebuild and they want to have a shot at getting a franchise quarterback in this draft, you had to lose this game. You had to lose this game. So when they were up 28-27, Washington fans were going to go berserk if they won this game because it would have set the franchise back, and I believe this. It would have set the franchise back at least another few years if Washington were to win this game. Go from our top 4 pick in the draft to now almost outside the top 10. It would put you out of quarterback range early on in the draft. You now have to settle for a guy if you want to go quarterback in the Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy if he enters. But now with the loss, you still stay in the top 4, and a big part of that is to that 54-yard field goal from Greg Zuerlein. Great stuff on him. If he didn't make that field goal and Washington were to win this game, it would have been bad. It would have been very, very bad because not only do you not have a franchise quarterback anymore in Sam Howell, because again, Sam Howell getting benched now back-to-back weeks. He's done. The experiment is over for him in Washington. But you also win the game and you kind of ruin your draft capital a little bit. That also would have been bad. So at least they lost because now you're in great position. The Bears are currently up against the Cardinals 14-0 right now. But if Arizona can come back and win this game, it moves Washington up to the 3rd overall pick. If the Patriots can win tonight against, I guess, the Broncos, then it moves Washington up as well to a top 2 pick as well. So there's a lot of stuff happening for a lot of different scenarios that Washington can get right now, and it kind of opens up the flexibility of what Washington can do with a higher draft pick. It's also more appealing for a new head coach or a new GM that wants to come in, and again, the product on the field currently is bad. No GM, no head coach wants to come in and start to try and coach this team because this team is far away from being a contender in the NFL. But if you have the assets, again, Washington has like over $90 million in cap space in this offseason. That's appealing for a new GM to try and make some moves. If you have a top 3 pick in the draft, that's also appealing for Washington to make some moves. You don't want to have a bad draft pick and not a lot of cap space. That's not appealing for a new GM coming in. You want to have a lot of cap space, which Washington has. and they elected not to re-sign guys like Chase Young and Montez Sweat to keep that amount of cap space. So now you can go for bigger guys, bigger edge rushers in free agency like Brian Burns and Josh Allen. But now the draft pick scenario is you need to have a top draft pick, and this job will be one of the like top tier open spots in the NFL, which I think it truly is. I know you don't have the quarterback that you were hoping for in Sam Howell. I know some of the receivers have been pretty disappointing. Eric Bieniemy has been disappointing. This defense was definitely a big disappointment this year. Had to trade away half your defensive line, but there's still some pieces, some young pieces that you can work with. Chris Rodriguez today, a former 6th-round pick, putting in the work and scoring twice and averaging over 5.5 yards per carry. You had, as I see the Bears go up now 20-0, so it doesn't look like the Cardinals will win that one. But you also had Emmanuel Forbes, who came in. I guess we can talk about him now too. Emmanuel Forbes, who came in, and I know he didn't play a lot this season, which is bad because, again, it's your 1st-round pick for Ron Rivera. It's your 1st-round pick. You've got to get him to play. And saying that he's not even getting any playing time at all. I know he struggled early on. He got benched. But getting benched doesn't mean you don't play for a month. And then I know the elbow injury, he barely played at all last week and he was healthy. He barely played. He wouldn't have even played this week unless Benjamin St-Juste didn't go down with a concussion. So that just shows, how much Rivera has already given up on his 1st-round pick. But also, again, Emmanuel Forbes, there is a reason why he gets drafted. He was valued so highly by some teams. I know it was Washington who ended up getting him at the end of the day, but he was still valued as a 2nd, 3rd-round draft pick. He still can do some things well. He's going to be a young piece that a new GM or new head coach would kind of eye on and kind of want. Jahan Dotson entering year 3 would definitely be something that that would be appealing to a new head coach and a new general manager. There's some other pieces too. KJ Henry had another good game today, 3 tackles for him. He's been very impressive. I definitely want to see more of him in the last 2 weeks. And I have to go back and watch the tape, but I wouldn't even be opposed to him maybe being a starter next year at edge. And then you sign one of the bigger guys like the Brian Burns or the Josh Allen in free agency to go across from him, because KJ Henry has looked good so far this season. So there's some pieces that are good on this team that are young and have potential. But again, you also want to have this top tier draft pick, which because of the loss, you still have it, and you're still in position to get a top 2 draft pick this year. That's crazy. So they're still in a good position, draft capital wise. But yeah, Emmanuel Forbes, I don't really know what Rivera is doing, but yeah, it's kind of embarrassing to see how much he defended him, and seeing him on draft day in the behind the scenes saying, I really like the guy, Emmanuel Forbes. He was kind of locked in on his guy, Emmanuel Forbes. You had to get him at 16. No matter what, Washington was going to draft him. They were even planning on trading up to draft Emmanuel Forbes. And so seeing that Rivera has already given up on him, definitely concerning. But at the end of the day, Rivera is not going to be the head coach in a month. So that's also that. But yeah, in terms of the NFL draft and update, I've kind of already talked about it already. But 4th overall pick for the Washington Commanders right now. They have the tiebreaker because of the strength of schedule over the Arizona Cardinals and over the New England Patriots. So again, the Cardinals currently losing big time right now to the Bears, but if they can come back somehow, and then if the Patriots or the Cardinals can win one game for the rest of the season, it would move the Commanders up into the top 3, which then you move into the top 3, you're thinking, okay, maybe you have a shot at Caleb Williams or Drake May. You move into the top 2 and the Cardinals and the Patriots win at some point this season and Washington loses out. You're like, okay, we actually have a shot at Caleb Williams or Drake May, 2 franchise-altering quarterbacks. So, yeah, there's a lot on the line in terms of wins and losses for the Commanders, the Cardinals, and the Patriots for the rest of the season. But yeah, in terms of where they're at right now, again, 4th, you're still out of position to probably draft Olu Fashanu or Joe Alt at left tackle, because once more, the offensive line today was not great. Sam Howell, he's kind of Washington's kind of broken him to the point where he's feeling false pressure. And even when the offensive line plays good on some snaps, he feels like, oh, that the clock in his head is so short because he's used to having a bad offensive line because he's had one for the last all season long. So you've just broken him really if you're Ron Rivera and if you're Eric Bieniemy in the offensive line, because you kind of messed up his development, and it's unfortunate. But at the end of the day, it hasn't worked out, and now you're going to be looking for another franchise quarterback in this offseason. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Washington does with their draft capital for in the offseason. But yeah, that'll do it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. It's the instant reaction episode coming out just a few hours after the game ends. Who knows what's next for this Washington team? They play the 49ers next week. They play the Cowboys in 2 weeks. Sounds like Jacoby Brissett will be the starter next week. It's not confirmed yet, but it definitely sounds like it from what Ron Rivera said in his press conference. I'm hoping the Cardinals can somehow come back and the Patriots can somehow win tonight or win at some point. So then Washington has a better draft pick. But yeah, this was the best chance for Washington to have another win before the end of the season. They did not, thanks to Greg Zuerlein and the Jets holding on with Trevor Siemian playing a solid game as well. But yeah, that'll do it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.